Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Cindy Goodman-stulberg, and she's here today to talk with us about her new book, Feeling Better. Beat depression and improve your relationships with interpersonal psychotherapy. Now, Cindy is a psychotherapist who has counseled individuals, couples, groups, and families for more than 40 years. She's a co-author of Feeling Better and co-director of the Institute for Interpersonal Psychotherapy with Ronald Frey, PhD. So let's welcome to the show, Cindy Goodman-stulberg.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today and to your listeners.
Oh, well, thank you, and what a pleasure it is to have you here. And I think people are just, I can see why they're so excited about your book because, my goodness, it's changing so many people's lives.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think everyone certainly wants to handle their relationships well and to have good, meaningful, constructive relationships, and that's really what we're trying to share, is that information, how to do that and how to feel better.
Yeah, and you definitely provide that as a guide in feeling better. Well, and so why don't we start with, what was the inspiration behind writing this book?
And that's great in terms of I've done this work for many, many, many years, almost 20 years, now over 20 years with my colleague, Dr. Ron Frey, and my co-author. And interpersonal psychotherapy, or IPT, is a very, very effective, research-proven, short-term, you can, do the work in 8 to 12 weeks model that is kind of the best-kept secret in psychology. So we wanted to share the information with the general public.
The stuff that you've been using with your clients and the people that reach out to you. My goodness, how exciting is that?
Yeah, and so we started probably almost 3 years ago putting the book together because it's a very effective therapy that's recommended highly for people who are struggling with mood difficulties and anyone who wants to improve their relationships. And so there are a lot of professional books, but there isn't in North America a book specifically for the reader, for someone who can, wants to work on this themselves. So we really were excited and wanted to help disseminate and share the information. Information that's a very practical, oriented, anybody can do it. Common language, just plain ordinary language, no professional jargon involved.
Well, I'm sure people are very much appreciating just being able to have this book, and I know you guys are getting some great recommendations in regards to it. So why don't we dive into it a little bit? I know you talk, it goes through 12 weeks, and it's got these great tips and try this and pep talks, which I love. They're like sprinkled in just at the right place to kind of help give you encouragement and, kind of ideas on what to do.
Yes, and I think that's been our work for many, many, many years. I'm a clinician, and I've worked for a long time with people with all kinds of difficulties, all kinds of problems, and this model itself has been adapted for not only people who have mood difficulties, but anyone who's feeling stress in their relationships. It also has been extremely effective for postpartum depression, for new moms and new parents. It's really helpful for eating disorders, and it also has been recently shown to be extremely effective for post-traumatic stress disorder. So it really covers, and really all ages. I work with adolescents, I work with adults, I've worked with older clients, so it has a very broad reach in terms of anyone who's having any kind of difficulties.
Mm-hmm. Well, and your book goes over so many different things. Of course, we're not going to be able to cover it all today because I'm sure our listeners will want to pick up their own copy of Feeling Better. But so what is the key to our happiness?
I think we've, in some ways gotten it wrong in terms of just focusing on the biological aspects. And fundamentally, if you have good, meaningful, constructive relationships, you're going to feel better. And if you are struggling with stresses, conflicts, difficulties, and you do have those good relationships, then you're going to feel better much more quickly. So fundamentally, it's really your mood is a result of the work you do in trying to develop good, meaningful relationships, or, deal with the problems that are occurring in a relationship you're currently in, making that relationship better, addressing conflict in a way that you don't have to really fight and argue about it. It's being able to look at relationships from your point of view and the other person's point of view. How are we interacting with each other? What I'm saying, how does that affect you? What you're saying to me, how does that affect me? How do I feel about it? So that's a huge component. That's really the basis of the model and the work that is described in the book, is those important relationships in your life.
When you went ahead and put in the book the sections that say try this and pep talks, were they're done specifically for, to kind of get the reader more engaged in connecting with other people or doing specific things?
I think it was highlighting, really, when in each chapter. So when we recommend you seek out someone and tell them that you've been feeling, crappy, or you haven't been feeling good, or something's bothering you, we would probably highlight moments in those chapters of probably the take-home or the most key messages. So if someone's flipping through and sees one of the pep talks or the take-home messages and they want to expand on that, then they can, read in more depth. Those were just really to, highlight and remind people of the things that they could do that would be practically, make a difference in terms of their situations.
Well, and can people be taught the skills to help them feel better? Has that been your experience?
Absolutely, because I think some of the skills are, first of all, people will sometimes feel crappy or feel bad or wake up in the morning and not feel good, and they'll say, I don't really know what's bothering me. And it's very interesting because if you take the time to review, well, what happened in the morning, what happened the night before, and they begin to realize that, well, I got into an argument with my mother. So they had a terrible night's sleep, and they were upset, and they were struggling, and then the next day they're still feeling bad. What we do is we help the person figure out how to identify what's bothering them. And it's not about identifying everything. Look, there's no point in identifying 20 things that are bugging you. You might as well start with one and fix that one so you don't feel so overwhelmed. And we help people, we really do describe very clearly, how we often say things to other people and what may be more constructive way to say it. So that's one skill. Another skill is when people are dealing with transitions in their lives, like a job change or a divorce or, even the birth of a child is a huge change. We help them manage those transitions. We give them suggestions and specific steps to take to manage those things as well. So any skills that we recommend, any strategies we recommend, we walk everybody through those, and so there isn't any reason why people can't, use those skills and the skills they already have in a way that's going to work better for them.
Mm-hmm. And be able to kind of gauge that. Well, what's interesting, you also have a section in your book that talks about the F word, basically for men, for guys.
The guy talk section. My friend Ron is great. Ron is great because we have been working together for 1,000,000 years, and we have a wonderful relationship. We teach clinicians. We basically we've done certainly a lot of clinical work ourselves with people, but we also teach this model to other therapists, and that's what we want to be able to make sure that this kind of work is available to people who are readers or anyone who wants to seek out a professional who can do the work. And Ron's great. Ron and I have a great time together, and his personality shines through in the guy talk sections of the book.
Well, and for our listeners that are wondering what we're talking about, the F word is actually feelings. So
yes.
There's a whole section there that gets into that. But do you know what? I think for some guys, it probably would make them cuss, to have to talk about their feelings. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that perspective is very important, and I think we're very fortunate these days that more men and really are talking about these things, and even athletes. There are certainly a number of basketball players. There are a number of entertainment people who are saying, I'm struggling. I'm having difficulty with my mood. I'm having difficulty with anxiety, and for sure, men certainly handle these things different than women, right? And even in terms of talking about feelings, right? It's like I think men can, when a woman tries to talk to a guy and they try to solve the problem, right? And you really sometimes want just someone to listen to you. So, being understanding that each person has their different ways of doing it, and being able to really appreciate and understand how different people are trying to express themselves, or maybe have difficulty expressing themselves, is another aspect that we try to explore with the reader.
Well, I think I agree with you. It's such a great age we live in because, people are talking about anxiety and depression and feelings much more than they ever have before. So it's something that's open in many ways to discussion.
Right. And we're trying, I think what's important, too, is when we look at any mood difficulties, is we look at it, it's an illness. It's not something, and it's like having a broken leg. And certainly no one's going to feel guilty or bad, or people aren't going to, get annoyed at you if you have a broken leg and you need extra help. But with mood difficulties or other problems, there has been a lot of stigma. And I think what we want people to understand is that they don't need to blame themselves. They don't need to suffer in silence. They need to be able to explain what they're feeling, and really that we offer that in the book too, the education about these things and information that not only can the reader, give themselves a break about, but to share that with other people who they're living with, so they can get the support and the care that they need during certain times in their lives, right?
Yeah, I love that analogy, because a lot of times people, when they think of someone that has depression, there is this kind of bad connotation that goes with it. But if someone breaks a leg, we don't worry about it. You're like, oh, we just...
Right, absolutely. And it's treatable. You know what? You can, and really what you're doing is you're taking some time to feel better and to work at helping yourself feel better. And I'm always impressed, because I believe very strongly that people have the ability to help themselves do things to help them, to make themselves feel better. And it's not like you have to do big things. You can do small things. You can reach out to someone and say, I'm having a rough day. Can I talk to you? And it may sound like that's difficult, but if someone did that with you, I'm sure you'd say, sure. I have, let's get together for a coffee. And, I felt that way too sometimes. So that's an important thing we really want people to understand, is that you're not bothering somebody. It's a mutual give and take, that people who are connected to one another are happy to help each other when they need it. Most people are, don't you find? I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what friends and family are about.
Right.
That we want to be there to lean on each other during those difficult times. And, that's the whole reason for having friends.
Right. That's right. Otherwise, if they're not, get rid of those ones who don't want to listen. Find the kind you want to hang out with. And it's true. I think certainly in this model, those are your choices. You can certainly develop friendships, and some of your friendships or your colleagues or your family are going to be there for you. And if you feel that it's not working for you, or feel that people are putting too much pressure on you and you're not getting enough out of the relationship, then you can try to change that. You can work, and really it's about expectations, because there's a huge section in the book and in this model that really helps people understand their expectations of themselves and the other person, and then to clarify what the other person expects for themselves and for them. And you're hoping to find people who, have similar expectations of you, that you both believe it's good to be there and be supportive of one another, that it's good to be, if someone asks you a question, and, to be honest in responding to one another, to be responsible or reliable. Those are the kinds of things we highlight, and if that isn't the case in your relationship and you've tried to work on it, you can, either find other people who may be more aligned and more similar to the way you interact, and you can certainly keep those friendships, but you're not going to always rely on those people. You're going to look towards someone else maybe, and let it bother you less that particular person isn't, meeting every expectation you have.
Well, and do you find that sometimes we have unrealistic expectations of the people around us?
That was a great point, and I was going to just kind of make that as well, because I think it's very important. I think oftentimes we have very unrealistic expectations of our partners in particular, right? And because not one person is going to be able to meet all our needs all the time, whenever we want them, and in exactly the way we want it, right? So I think it's important to be realistic and to understand that it's reasonable to, ask people you're close to for certain things. But if you expect them to be there all the time and, every moment, you're going to be disappointed. So it's realistic to look for the good things that they can provide for you. And then maybe really, find a girlfriend to talk to when you're, when you want to rehash something for the 50th time, because, and even I'll say to my own friends sometimes, I'll say, if you're tired of hearing this, tell me. And they've told me sometimes, and they'll say, get over it. I don't necessarily want to hear it, but I hear it. And they're probably right. I'll have a momentary, little huff like, oh, they don't understand. But really, there's a lot of different. I should maybe try somebody else to talk to. Well, you're right. Our expectations can be very, very high and unrealistic sometimes. We have to really take a good look at that, Well,
it seems that there's also something to kind of getting it out, having people that you can have as that sounding board and talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's better. It's better to express what you're concerned about and how you're feeling rather than carry it around inside you. It can be very burdensome, very difficult, and people sometimes are afraid to speak up, but that's okay. You can feel a little bit anxious. Let's say you need to talk to your boss because they're putting too much pressure on you in terms of work. Well, you don't have to catastrophize. Oftentimes people who are feeling down, they, number one, think of the most negative thing that could possibly happen. And, they have themselves fired and out the door, but that's not as realistic. So we really wanted people to feel that they can express themselves. And then we ask people to say to themselves, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the best thing that can happen? Well, what's the most realistic? And it's usually the most realistic, something in the middle, that will happen when you speak up, rather than assuming. If you go and talk to a boss about something, people will feel, I'm going to get fired. If you ask them what's the best thing, well, I'm going to, they're going to say, thanks for telling me I'm going to get a raise and a promotion, which is probably not going to happen. But realistically, the boss will say, okay, thanks for telling me. Maybe we'll see what we can do, right? So that's going to feel better than being angry, being, mad, being, frustrated, because at least you've tried. You've tried to express yourself. And I often tell people, I'll say, make sure you pay attention to how you feel when you've told somebody something, when you've told them how you feel or what's bothering you. Because no matter what the outcome is, 9 times out of 10, it'll make you feel better. That you've actually said what you need to say in as constructive a way as possible. And that's in and of itself a valuable thing to do, no matter whether it works out for you or it doesn't. It's very, very important to do that.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Cindy Goodman-Stulberg in regards to her new book, Feeling Better: Beat Depression and Improve Your Relationships with Interpersonal Psychotherapy. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted that we're here with our very special guest today, Cindy Goodman-Stulberg, and she's here sharing with us her new book, Feeling Better: Beat Depression and Improve Your Relationships with Interpersonal Psychotherapy. Now, Cindy, before we went from break, we were talking about, having your voice, for people to really discover their voice by determining what's the worst, what's the best. So it allows them to find that middle ground and what's really realistic. I love that example that you gave.
Absolutely. So you're not going to, and you won't be disappointed. So we really want people, when you look at something, is this going to solve every problem I've ever had and I'm never going to have a problem again? Well, no. I'm not going to overpromise, but I'm going to tell you, and that's why we really kind of talk feeling better. It's going to make you feel better. And that to me is a worthwhile proposition. And you're going to know in the book, too, you're going to know what you did to help yourself feel better, so that you're going to apply that to the next problem and the next person that you encounter. That, to me, is very important, that you then know what you've done so you can continue to do it again.
That is beyond important. Most of us don't even have the skill set to understand how to live life in a kind of productive way. I mean, some people, are naturally equipped with it, and others we have to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Nice to have these tools,
Mm-hmm. For sure. You need to know, and that's basically the steps we take, and we really focus for people, help them focus on their common areas that people go through when they're struggling with their moods, and one of them is conflict, or another one is if you're dealing with kind of an unresolved bereavement, if someone has passed away many years ago, but it's still, a very difficult issue to deal with, and you feel like you're still stuck 3, 4, 5 years ago when the person died, or if you're going through a transition, like a divorce, or a new baby, or a job loss, and also if people who are isolated and don't have very many friends or colleagues or family relationships, they feel very isolated and lonely. So we really try to hone in on one or two of those areas and help someone set a concrete goal of what they'd like to accomplish, and so that they'll know that when they've done that, they're feeling, they know what they're going to get, and then they do feel better at the end of the work they're doing.
Well, what a great place to be in, to know that you do the work and there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely.
One of the questions I had here, and I know we've kind of gone a little bit beyond this, but I'd love for you to kind of just give us some of the signs that someone may be depressed, because I think a lot of times people, they don't recognize the signs, or just
for sure
what else is going on,
Yeah, I think the hard part is often there's some physical signs and there's some emotional signs. So if you're feeling negative, if you're irritable, if you're not sleeping or you're sleeping too much, if you're not eating, you don't have much of an appetite, or you're eating excessively, if you've got a lack of interest in the things that you usually enjoy or like to do, if you're isolating yourself, if you basically have low motivation, if you're feeling angry. That's one of the other things, too, sometimes is underneath intense feelings of anger can be a lot of sadness as well, but it gets covered up. It's those kinds of, you have a low sex life. You're not interested in your, intimate relationships the way you used to be interested. So those are pretty typical signs, and I think it's important then for people to just check. You don't have to be depressed to read the book and to benefit from it, but if you are, then you want to check into that. Or if other people are telling you that this is what they think, they're not telling you because they're mad at you. They're not telling you to make you feel bad. It's better just to be less defensive about that, to say, what are you noticing? Maybe I am. Let me think about it. It's a great response to give to someone who says to you, are you depressed? And you can consider it, and you can say, well, what makes you think that? And thank you, or, I'm glad you felt comfortable telling me or talking to me. Let me think about it. I think that's a good way to respond to at times. You don't have to say, no, that's ridiculous. You can just say anything, even if you don't want to do something right away, you can always, hopefully you will think about it. But it's a good response rather than being defensive and rather than not listening when people are showing concern for you.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because, it's had such a bad connotation for such a long time. I really do believe that, things are changing with that. So, if we have had discussions with friends or family or people we know in the past about depression, that, of course they get a little defensive because they're thinking, well, this means I'm bad or it's a bad thing, when that's not the case.
Absolutely. And I think it takes great strength to be open and willing to share, if you're having a difficult time. And what's fascinating, I find, is that if you open up, other people open up to you as well. So there's been many times when I've had clients who will say, I told, my roommate about some difficulties with my dad, that my dad drank excessively and it was really tough for me. And, she said, my father did that too. So you'd be amazed at how, one person has to start, right? And if you open up to someone else, oftentimes they'll tell you how they're feeling as well. And not only does it make you feel not alone, but it also brings people closer together because, our real relationships are ones where we know each other. It's not just about talking about the weather, right? It's where we are open enough to share, not just all the great things our kids do, but all the things they do that are annoying and irritating as well, right? And it doesn't mean we're a bad parent. I'd much rather talk to someone who tells me that their kid isn't perfect, So.
How could that be, right?
That's right. I'm a perfect mother. Why would I?
Why would I have perfect children? Come on now. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you touched on something that I would like to draw attention to. You talked about relationships, and I think week 2 is one of my favorite weeks in this. It talks about drawing your social circle.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the social circle's terrific. I love it. Well, the social circle is, I'll share that with your listeners. The social circle is really great way to look at a relationship because it's better not to look at relationships as good or bad or black or white. There are some good things about them. There are some things that are difficult about them. And really what we try to help people do is identify their relationships in that way. So we ask individuals to put their relationships on a circle with them in the middle, and they plot the people around it. And then they ask themselves a few questions. You identify what you like, what's satisfying about the relationship, what you don't like about the relationship, and what would you like to be different. And that really helps inform what we're going to continue to do and who we're going to focus on in the rest of the work together. So the social circle is fabulous. It's really called an interpersonal inventory. But everybody likes the circle. Everybody likes the social circle.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it really
it's a great way
and it breaks it down so great because a lot of times I think, and you'll probably see where I'm going with this, because you have this section that talks about acquaintance or friend. And drawing that distinction, I think, is so important.
And some people have really never had a deep, meaningful relationship with somebody. Some people have only had acquaintances, so being able to help them, develop that or experience it or feel it is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And having that in your life is just invaluable. There's nothing better than having people around you and you around them so that you can be a good, caring, loving person to them. And you get that in return, So for sure, we really do. And I would talk about that in terms of, let's say, social media. You talk about our Facebook friends, real friends. That's a whole other show we could talk about. But, in terms of there's advantages to that, but there's nothing like face-to-face time with someone else. So if you're far away and you need to connect, it's terrific. But if you can be in the same room at the same time and sharing something, an experience with one another, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's so great that we talk about social media because we do get connected with so many people. We have so many, quote, friends in social media. There are some that we develop that actually become true friends, But most of them appear to be just like observers or people that are kind of acquaintances. They're kind of in that category.
Right, and if you do want to make it more meaningful, or you want to develop into a better relationship, then it's probably because you're sharing something more personal, or you're spending some time together, or you're helping each other out in some way, or you're there for one another in terms of providing information or advice. So that's what really solidifies and makes your connections meaningful. And look, if people are looking for those connections, why else would you post something or like something or connect? Because everybody wants some connection, wants to tell somebody else what they're doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, have that.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, feel connected. But, at the same time, it's like I could be connected to Christina Aguilera on Twitter, but we're not friends.
Right. I know. We were thinking the other day about posting something that would say, who would you really like to have a relationship with? Who are the 3 people in the world? Yeah, for sure. It's your neighbor. And then you walk out the door and you really don't know your neighbor that well, right?
Oh, my goodness. Well, isn't that the truth? And what a great place to start. If we're going to make relationships and develop, meaningful relationships, why not with the people that live directly near us?
Right. And people you see all the time, right? So, I think sometimes we do really have to make that effort. You look at someone and you smile. Even it's funny, my daughter-in-law, I know, had told me a story about walking in the park with her baby, and then someone was there with a newborn who was fussy and crying, and she went up to the woman, she didn't know her, and she said, "Don't worry, it'll get better." So the fact that you know that there are people out there who are in the same boat as you are, you're not alone, and that they will get better, right? So it's just those moments are I was, really impressed when she told me about that time when she had talked to somebody just as she was walking in the park with her kid.
Well, and, you have this section in the book also. And there's lots of sections actually in this book. There's one section in this book that talks about feeling words. Why is it important to know those?
Well, I think people get stuck sometimes not knowing how to express themselves. And when you ask someone how they're feeling, they'll often tell you how they're thinking. Oh, well, that really bothers me, and because he should be nicer to me. And instead of just saying, that makes me sad. It upsets me when when you criticize my mother. I don't mind hearing what she did that you didn't like, but when you call her names or you say really mean things, it bothers me. So being able to really help people articulate their feelings is critically important. So we really do try to list, lots of different words that people can use to help themselves. And it's great to teach kids too, right? And as I think I said before, being angry sometimes seems to be our default position. But if you say to someone, what else do you feel besides angry? Or you can really get them to go beneath some of that and say, well, I'm sad. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling criticized. So if someone's like that, instead of, getting angry back or instead of backing off, if you can even ask that question to another person, what else are you feeling? And to even offer them a few words that are in that chapter. Well, are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling sad about something? Are you feeling lonely? It really helps people identify what's really going on for them. And people really then will offer often a lot more care and concern when you've been able to just say how you feel.
Do you think that actually in the process of being able to really identify, as opposed to I'm just angry, but maybe I'm feeling impatient or irritated or jealous, that it helps people to really figure out where they're at on the scale of, how to deal with their emotions and where they are as far as their how they're feeling?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really helps them to hone in and to articulate what's going on and what the problem is. You're right. So if I'm mad at you because you've gone out 5 nights this week and I'm jealous because you're spending more time with your friends than with me, then by saying that, by saying I'm jealous, then I can begin to articulate what's bothering me. Hopefully the other person might say, well, what are you jealous about? And then you can talk about, well, the problem is I want to spend more time with you. Do you want to spend more time with me? So instead of being mad at somebody, or just calling them a name, like it's much less helpful to, say to your partner, you're a jerk. It's easier to say, what bothers me when you throw all your laundry on the floor. You know what I mean? It just upsets. It's much more productive to do it that way, to say it upsets me or it bothers me or it irritates me because I've talked to you about this a million times and you don't seem to be listening, than to get into a fight and bring up everything that's happened in the last 5 years, right? It doesn't.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't work, and it just makes everybody feel bad, right? You feel bad and the other person feels bad, and you don't get anywhere. So one of the steps to feeling better and having a constructive relationship is to express yourself as clearly as possible. And that's really what those feeling words are about.
Mm-hmm. Well, what if people are having like a conflict that is kind of being acted out in an unhealthy way? Is it kind of the conflict just goes too far?
Yeah. Well, I think there primarily are safety issues. I think any time, if there's any issue of concern about safety, if there's any kind of physical aggression, then I think you have to set certain limits. Like that's not reasonable and it's not okay for anybody to be harmed by anyone else. So that's really an extreme. If people are yelling and screaming at one another, then I think you can try to calm things down. One person can stop the interaction. If I choose not to continue to participate in the conversation, then it's not going to carry on. So I have to take responsibility for that. And really the outcomes for conflict between people are either, one of the individuals is going to make some changes, or both of the people are going to make some changes, or you're going to, let certain things bother you less. So if it's something that isn't, like a deal breaker and it's more about the way the person, isn't interested in necessarily all the same things you are and you're prepared to accept that, then you'll go find ways to have that need filled with other people. If you need to terminate a relationship, then you do that too. And we really help people with that. If a person needs to say, this isn't working, it's destructive, I need to end this relationship, then we help you take those steps and manage the feelings that revolve from that kind of a situation.
Well, how important is that? Because it's good to have these healthy relationships that surround us. And, a lot of times when we're going through different stages in life, taking inventory of the relationships we do have and kind of deciding whether or not they serve us anymore is I think, healthy.
And it's okay to set those boundaries. It's okay not to do what somebody else wants you to do. If you don't want to participate in a holiday with someone else and it's not going to work for you and you've tried to make those changes, and you've tried to express what the problems are, then you can, make changes. You can do it differently. And if they accept it, they accept it. And if they don't, then you deal with that as well. But I think it's that, as you say, it's very important to know when something's not going to work, and if it's not going to change, you're certainly entitled to make decisions that are for your own and your family's well-being, and that you're not a bad person because of that.
Yeah, it's healthy, it's okay, and sometimes we do that.
And you can get support from people who've done it, and you can talk to other people who can encourage you and let you know that it's okay, that there are people who are going to be, have done that, and they've gotten through it as well. So that's extremely helpful.
Yeah, what a journey that is. I mean, you look at all these different aspects, and you could see by doing all these things, it really helps to set the foundation for just a whole new beginning. And how exciting is that?
Absolutely. And also to be a model, a role model for other people around you, right? Like if you can learn these techniques and this way of doing it, then you're showing other people, you're showing your people you work with, you're showing your children and your family and your grandchildren. I know of my grandkids who I have a number of. You're really helping people see a different way of interacting. I mean, I've learned a tremendous amount from my own partner, my own husband of 45 years of, how to interact and how to have good relationships. So you can be in not only do you feel better, but you're teaching other people that you care about how to do this as well.
Yeah, and how to move forward and have healthy lives. And what a difference that will make. One person, I could just see this kind of spanning out as you have people learning how to have healthier relationships, not only with themselves, but with others.
Absolutely. In any setting, friends, family, colleagues, other people in your community. It's very valuable. It really is. It's got a lot going. And really the creators of this were in the 1960s. I mean, Doctors Klerman and Wiseman were the ones who developed this particular model, and people have been using it for a long time all over the world. It's being disseminated in many, many, many countries. We've also taught people in the U.S. and in Canada and in Europe, and so it's something that really, should be shared information with.
Now, does Feeling Better also work with young adults and children?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been adapted for adolescents and can be used with younger children as well. As an adult using it, certainly you might have different expectations. It's going to be more on the adult to manage the situations when you're dealing with a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old child, but it's very, very helpful. It's great for adolescents and young adults because it's short term. So you can do the work in a short period of time. You're not, and that's what they like a lot as well. And certainly for adolescents, relationships are hugely important to them. That's very much their focus, is on other people and other friends and everything that goes on like that. So it's extremely valuable for them.
Well, and so, Cindy, where can people connect with both you and Dr. Frey in regards to feeling better and learn more about your book and just be part of your community?
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from people and develop relationships with them. Basically, they need to look up feelingbetterthebook.com, and that will connect them to us, to order the book, which is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and they can reach us through that. We wanted to make it as simple and easy to remember as possible, other than looking up Cindy Stulberg, which they can do as well. But if you look up Feeling Better, the book, which hopefully people will find easy to remember, then they'll get to us and they'll find us. And we'd be delighted to absolutely hear from anybody who needs or wants to communicate with us. That's the kind of relationships we'd like to have with our readers as well, and talk to them about what they're dealing with.
Well, this book is going to make such an impact in so many people's lives, and this is the perfect time of year to pick up Feeling Better and have that as gifts. Give that away to people that you love. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It was my pleasure, and I really appreciate you sharing the information. It's very, very kind of you to do so.
Well, thank you, Cindy. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Feeling Better. Beat depression and improve your relationships with interpersonal psychotherapy. Again, you can connect with Cindy on her website, interpersonal-psychotherapy.com, where you can learn more about her book. Her book's also available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.